Mangwanani Mwalelepo Vukenjani, Click Class Dumelang Manave Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning, the news and current affairs show bringing you everything you need to know happening on the African continent and beyond. These are some of the stories we'll be looking at. Mugabe's son admits firearm offense in South Africa as well as to staying illegally in the country and is ready to be deported. However, the case will continue. Malema's 5-year sentence leaves political path open. Tunisian comedian Abdelli given 18-month sentence in absentia. Pope Leo rejects Trump feud narrative during Africa tour remarks. Zimbabwe bird returns home after more than a century abroad. We'll also be zoning in on Zambia as we look at the top stories from that country. My name is Ashwin Berry. Top stories shortly.
Namibia is a land of movement, with waves that never stop reaching forward. Here, adventure is not something we search for. It is something we are born into. In every corner of this country, creativity rises. From artists, from athletes, from dreamers. And when the world comes to explore Namibia, they discover something extraordinary. Because when sport moves people, creativity moves ideas, and tourism moves the world toward us. Something powerful happens. A platform where movement meets imagination, where industries connect, where opportunity grows, where Namibia's next chapter begins. Welcome to the Creative Sport Tourism Expo. Exhibit, partner, experience. Creative Sport Tourism.
All right, it's time to get into our top stories. The youngest son of Zimbabwe's late former president, Robert Mugabe, has pleaded guilty to pointing a firearm and being illegally in South Africa following his arrest in February after a 23-year-old man was shot at his Johannesburg home. Belamin Mugabe, 28, entered his pleas alongside co-accused Tobias Matonodze, 33, during an appearance at the Alexandra court on Friday, where both men have been held in custody since 19 February. Lawyers told the court the pair are willing to return to Zimbabwe at their own expense if a custodial sentence is avoided. Matonodze pleaded guilty to attempted murder, defeating the ends of justice, illegal immigration, and possession of ammunition. Mugabe, previously also facing attempted murder charges, confirmed he understood the charges before entering his plea. Prosecutors said the shooting followed a dispute inside the Hyde Park property, with the victim shot twice in the back while fleeing. Authorities have not yet recovered the firearm. Sentencing is set for 24 April after earlier delays, including postponed bail hearings in the ongoing matter. Staying in South Africa, Julius Malema, leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters, has been handed a 5-year prison sentence for unlawfully possessing a firearm and discharging it in public, raising uncertainty around his political future while leaving immediate consequences limited. The 45-year-old opposition figure, known for criticizing Western imperialism and advocating nationalization of white-owned land, told the court in Kugompo City he fired shots in celebration. Convicted on 5 offenses, including reckless endangerment, he has been granted the right to appeal the sentence, but not the conviction, meaning he will not go to prison until the process concludes. Legal expert Ulrich Roux said Malema must first seek permission from the Eastern Cape High Court, with the state likely to oppose. Malema has vowed to pursue the matter up to the Constitutional Court if necessary. Under South African law, his sentence is not final until appeals are exhausted, allowing him to remain an MP and campaign in upcoming local elections. Analysts say the extended legal timeline could shape both his leadership and the party's electoral positioning. Now we swing to the top of Africa in Tunisia, where actor and comedian Lofty Abdelli has been sentenced in absentia to 18 months in prison over a play performed years ago. A ruling he says is politically motivated and aimed at silencing critical voices. Tunisian media reported that he faced charges of insulting state officials and offending public morals. Abdelli, 56, who has intensified satirical criticism of President Kais Saied in recent months, described the verdict as an attempt to intimidate artists and restrict free expression. Speaking from Paris, where he now lives, he said the ruling, while painful, adds to his artistic achievements. In a recent satirical video, he compared Saied to a king without solutions who embraces citizens only during official visits and imprisons critics. Rights groups say the government has cracked down on dissent since Saied began ruling by decree in 2021. A court spokesperson did not respond to requests for comment. Abdelli has long performed to packed audiences using satire to portray political figures in caricatured form. Pope Leo has dismissed suggestions of a feud with U.S. President Donald Trump, stating that it is not in his interest to engage in debate and that earlier reporting of his remarks has not been entirely accurate. Speaking aboard a papal flight to Angola during his Africa tour, the first U.S. Pope clarified that comments made in Cameroon describing a world ravaged by a handful of tyrants were prepared weeks earlier and not directed at Trump. The remarks had drawn criticism, including from Vice President J.D. Vance, who later welcomed the clarification. Trump had responded ahead of the tour by criticizing the Pope's stance on crime and foreign policy in a social media post, which also included an AI-generated image of Trump as Jesus that was later removed. Pope Leo has continued to speak out on global issues, including war and inequality, during his tour, which spans multiple countries and thousands of kilometers. He maintained that his message centers on peace, rejecting interpretations that frame his comments as a direct confrontation with political leaders. Here is the Pope on his flight to Angola.
At the same time, there's been a certain narrative that has not been accurate in all of its aspects, but because of the political situation created when on the first day of the trip, the President of the United States made some comments about myself. Much of what has been written since then has been more commentary on commentary, trying to interpret what has been said. Just one little example, the talk that I gave at the prayer meeting for peace a couple days ago was prepared 2 weeks ago, well before the president ever commented on myself and on the message of peace that I am promoting. And yet, as it happens, it was looked at as if I was trying to debate again the president, which is not my interest at all. So we go on the journey, we continue proclaiming the gospel message. The texts of the gospel we've been using through the liturgies give a number of different fantastic, beautiful aspects of what it's about to be Christian, of what it's about to follow Christ, of what it's about to promote fraternity and brotherhood, trusting in the Lord, but also looking for ways to promote justice in our world, promote peace in our world. So with that note, I'm very happy to greet all of you, and thank you for the work that you're doing, and hope that the Lord will continue to bless all of us on this trip. Thank you very much.
All right, let's get into the last of our top stories. For those who do not know the etymology of the name Zimbabwe, it comes from Zimbabwe, which means the house of stone, which is why stone is very well respected in Zimbabwe, and thus the significance of this story. Zimbabwe has received the last of its displaced stone bird sculptures, marking the end of a 137-year absence and what President Emerson Mnangagwa called the return of a national icon. The soapstone carving, known as the Zimbabwe bird, was repatriated from South Africa after being taken during colonial times and sold to Cecil John Rhodes. The return also included 8 sets of human remains removed during colonial-era research. The sculptures, originally from the Great Zimbabwe site, built between the 11th and 15th centuries, have long symbolized national identity and appear on the country's flag and coat of arms. South Africa resolved legal barriers under the Rhodes Will Act by loaning the bird for 2 years while reviewing legislation to allow permanent repatriation. Earlier returns came from European countries, but this case stands out as an African-led restitution. Zimbabwe has pursued the return of artifacts since independence in 1980, viewing their recovery as both cultural and symbolic restoration of heritage. And we certainly hope all Zimbabweans around the world enjoyed celebrating their Independence Day on Saturday, which was April the 18th. This is still Africa Good Morning. Shortly, Mike Sichula will join us from Zambia to deliver the Zambia Report. But prior to that, let's have a look at the weather. This is Africa Good Morning, and it's time to talk to Mr. Mike Sichula. Mike Buribwanji.
Bueno, Buribwanji, Africa Good Morning to our dear viewers.
Thank you for joining us, Mike. Now, we'll start with a story with understandably heavy tones to it. 1,002 rape cases reported in Zambia with a 34.5% conviction rate.
Yes, this is something that was reported by Minister of Home Affairs, Mr. Jack Mwimbu, in Parliament last week. So the genesis of this statement, ministerial statement to Parliament, is that Cabinet or the Zambian government has enacted a law that prescribes all sexual offenses to be non-bearable offenses. So this means that if you are if you are accused of having committed rape, incest, you now go before the courts of law and you will not be granted bail, because these cases have been viewed to be serious, and they cause damage to victims of rape, incest, and any other sexual offenses that have been happening in the past. As you have rightly put it, those figures range from 2021 to 2025. So according to the ministry, according to the minister, he says This is the reason why the Zambian government wants to make the laws against sexual offenses to be as tough as theft of a motor vehicle. Because in Zambia, when you steal a motor vehicle, you will not be given bail. You can only. So this is something that has attracted debate from a number of players who say this law can be abused by politicians, where someone can just claim to say, I have been raped by such and such a person, but before you could be, the due process of the law can take its course. You could have saved some years, even when the matter was just an allegation that did not have any credible evidence. So people are asking that if this law is in place, then state institutions such as the police, they need to have adequate and support in terms of ensuring that cases are investigated as swiftly as possible to avoid people spending time in prison when they did not commit such an offense. So they are calling for DNA, improved DNA tests. So to avoid, and also they are also calling on politicians to avoid using this case against their political opponents. So it has divided the nation. Others want this case to go on. Others are saying it is a risk and a danger to Zambian society.
All right, Mike, moving on to a slightly more positive story. Zambia has registered a decline in HIV infections as well as AIDS-related deaths.
Yes, so again, this was also reviewed by the Minister of Health, Alex Katakwe, who said that the numbers have reduced because of the intervention such as the 90-90-90 and because of also financial support and medical support that has been coming from the American government. So the minister was speaking when they launched a new HIV/AIDS prevention measure of a ring that women can insert so that in case their sexual partner is not willing to have protection, then they could have already been protected against sexual partners who may not be willing to use available protection against the transmission of HIV. So again, a number of women organizations have supported this, and they're hoping that further the prevention of HIV is going to yield desired results. As we have seen last year, early this year, there was an announcement by the US government that they are going to cut HIV/AIDS funding to Zambia. But with such interventions coming on board, it is the expectation of the Zambian government that HIV cases are going to reduce even further.
All right, so Mike, unsurprisingly, whether it's because of his national performance or his current stature as the Zambian president, Hichilema has secured the UPND mandate unopposed.
Yes, something that was not, it's something that is unexpectedly. It has been happening even under the Patriotic Front administration of late President Lungu. Usually presidential candidates, when they are sitting heads of state, they go unopposed. There is just this pattern to say he must not be challenged by anyone. So and it happened to President Hichilema that he must be given a fresh mandate from 2026 to 2031. And as the nation heads to the polls on the 13th of August, Mr. Hichilema was given a resounding unopposed position, and he now is the president. So along him, the UPND conducted also what they called intra-party elections across all the 10 provinces. And after the elections were held, 70 members were elected to sit in the top organ of the UPND, what they call the National Management Committee. So there are 70. So what that means is that in each province, there are 10 officials that were elected. So the good part about this system is that it offers each region of Zambia to select 7 members of the UPND to sit on the highest organ of the UPND. So it brings about national identity, and also it brings about inclusivity. No one is going to complain that my region has not been represented. So now, having gone through this process, President Hakainde Hichilema now is expected to name a running mate. As you know, Zambia has a law where you must appoint your running mate, someone that you are not going to remove as and when you wish. So that is the expectation of Zambians, and also appoint other top figures within the party as the nation goes to the polls on 13th August.
So, in a very interesting development, Mike. Why? Because when somebody is hired to coach a national team, we expect that to be their full-time job, especially because they need to be constantly paying attention to these players, sometimes traveling to their clubs, just so they can always make sure that when it's time to put on the flag, they are ready with their 11 players. Now, the Copper Queens coach has requested a salary decrease, 50% cut, so that she can take up other jobs. What's happening, Mike?
Wow. The way you are surprised, a number of soccer fans in Zambia were also surprised, because they didn't expect that such a thing could happen from a national team coach who was given a contract to oversee the affairs of the Copper Queens. And the national team coach is also expected to pay attention, like you stated, to all the women league in the country, to spot out talent that can work well with the likes of Barbara Banda, Lecho Kundananji, and Lecho Nachula. But in the case of Nora Hopton, she decided to say, I needed to get a side hustle aside the role that I was given as a Copper Queen coach. Something that the Football Association of Zambia described as strange, because they expected her to be within Zambia and promote national women's football, but that is not the case. So according to her, she says she arrived at this decision because at some point the Football Association of Zambia owed her she was not paid on time, and she was having difficulties in terms of meeting her basic needs and just financial needs. That is the reason that she came up with that decision. But this decision has again exposed the Swiss women coach, because Zambians are saying, I think now she is underrating the Football Association of Zambia, and she's also underrating the impact that the Copper Queens have made, especially when you look at the past coach, Bruce Mwape. Bruce Mwape didn't have a very well-structured contract with the FA, but he delivered. Zambia went to the Olympics, and also Zambia qualified for their first World Cup. So this is something that the FA is waiting for the Swiss women national coach to come to Zambia and table down whatever concerns she has. But before this, she had actually wrote a very lengthy and detailed letter on LinkedIn, and she indicated that she was stepping down as the national women's national team coach.
All right. Very interesting story indeed, Mike. And thank you very much for bringing us the in-depth stories stemming from the real Africa, Zambia.
Thank you very much. About Arsenal, I just wanted to show you that if you see this necktie, this is a necktie that I used to wear about more than 20 years ago. I left high school in 2020, and this is a necktie that we used to use for the debate club. So I decided to have it on Africa Good Morning, so that our viewers can see this souvenir that I have with me. Africa Good Morning to our dear viewers.
Oh, wow. Wow, Mike. Okay, have to give it to you here. You know, when I come to Zambia, the first thing I'm going to try and purchase from you is that exact tie. All right, that's been Africa Good Morning on DSTV 285, GOTV 25, 102.com, Network Media Hub, and NTVAFRIKA.MY.NA. And since Mike got the best of me, we won't say Swirai Swakanaka at the end of this. We'll just say Kuchalo.